You've already announced that there's going to be a £7 billion for new transport projects outside London. Can you confirm that just £1.5 billion of that money hasn't been announced previously?
So the transport money that we announced is a combination of two things. One, we'd previously announced an overall envelope to improve how people get around our big cities. We wanted our cities, whether that's in the West Midlands or in Teesside or Greater Manchester, to have the same type of transport settlements that London's always enjoyed, where locally elected mayors can take a pot of money and decide how best to spend it to help all their residents. And we previously announced £4.2 billion for that. What we've actually done is top that up, as you said, by £1.5 billion, but then crucially give out the allocations for in that envelope, where are all the bits going to go? So it's going to create trams over here, bus links over here, road improvements over there. So whether you're in West Yorkshire, West Midlands, Greater Manchester, Teesside, local residents are going to see improvements over the next few years as their leaders are given the same type of power and funding that London has always enjoyed. So it's a great example of levelling up in practice, and it's ultimately just going to create growth in all of these places. OK,
so that's £1.5 billion worth of levelling up. We're going to talk to Tracy Brabin a bit later, the Mayor of West Yorkshire. Can you assure her that the money that she's going to get, 830 million, I think, will fund a new stop in Bradford from the new Northern Powerhouse rail line, plus an HS2 extension to Leeds?
So more broadly, and you'll speak to Tracy later, and we had comments, I think, yesterday, whether it's from Andy Burnham or indeed Andy Street in the West Midlands, our local mayors, actually all warmly welcoming, I think, the funding that was announced.
Everybody likes money, but let's see what it's going to buy.
So I think your specific question actually relates to something different. So what the money announced yesterday is about what we call intracity transportation. That's about how do we get people who live in and around a city to be able to get into the middle of it and out again easily. We actually don't do as well as we should do on that. If you look at cities like, say, Marseille or Lyon in France, it takes virtually no time at all, or within half an hour, for people to get from the out to the in. That journey time in some of our cities outside of London can take twice as long. And that's not great. It's not great for creating jobs, not great for people's quality of life. That's what we're trying to fix with these settlements that we've announced. What you're talking about is something different, and that's about how we connect up our towns and cities to each other. Now, that's going to be part of something called the Integrated Rail Plan, and plans for that will be announced shortly. But we have committed to improving the links between all our great cities across the north, for example, between Liverpool, Manchester and Leeds. Bradford will obviously be a part of that as well.
Yeah, Dan Jarvis, who is the mayor in elsewhere in Yorkshire, was saying yesterday that he's looking forward to some money for the extension of HS2. And Tracy Brabin's quite specific, whether it's this package of money this weekend or the 3-year spending review. She wants a stop in Bradford, and she wants HS2 to go to Leeds. Is that going to happen?
So that will be part of the Integrated Rail Plan, which will spell out our plans to connect up all our towns and cities, not just across the north, but also across the Midlands. It wouldn't be right for me to speculate on that now, but what I can tell you is people will see enormous improvements in journey times as we deliver what the Prime Minister said when he was first elected, an infrastructure revolution in this country. And why is this important? Because it's all very well to talk about the money we're spending. It's important because it creates jobs, it creates prosperity. If we can better connect up our towns and cities, that's going to allow our economy to grow, it's going to increase productivity and allow people to access better paying jobs. That's how we build a stronger economy in this country, and that's what next week's budget is all about. It's about building that stronger economy for the British people.
OK, we have to have people who can do the jobs, and you've put some money into skills and education. Let's start at the very beginning. You are going to give 500 million years for early years education. Now, your Conservative predecessors cut the Sure Start programme by about £1.2 billion over the past decade. Is this 500 million an admission that that was just a mistake?
So what this money is about is actually addressing something probably slightly different, and there's been enormous work being done, and particularly by one of my colleagues, Andrea Leadsom, and also Fiona Bruce. And what they've showed very clearly, as the evidence does, that the very early years in young families' lives are critical, and that's where parents often struggle, and that's where actually we need to provide a little bit more attention. So what we're announcing is funding to create a network of family hubs, which are broader than Sure Start centres, and they bring together lots of different services for new parents. And for the first time, we're going to roll those out, and whether that's parenting programs, support for mental health, help with very, very young children with things like numeracy and literacy as well. All those types of things we can bring together, help young parents at a difficult time. We know that that will make an enormous difference to those parents and those young families' lives. So I'm delighted that we're able to do this. And it's based on a lot of evidence and research that's been carried out over the last few years, which demonstrates this is an important thing to do.
Well, your predecessor, George Osborne, who was really principally responsible for taking a little bit more than £1 billion out of Sure Start. I mean, he's out of politics now, so you can say that was a mistake, can't you?
No, I think it's right to judge everyone by the context that they are doing their jobs in. And one thing that my predecessors, not just George, did was ensure that I actually had a very strong economy and strong set of public finances that I inherited. Now, that was really important because then when coronavirus came, which nobody knew about, I was able to respond in a comprehensive and generous fashion to support families, businesses and the country through the crisis. And actually part of my responsibility...
I'm talking about specific issues, George Start. It was an error.
No, you can pick on individual things, but overall, what my predecessors did was deliver a strong economy and a strong set of public finances, which we have now benefited from over the past year as we've responded and protected and supported people. Now, part of my job and part of what next week's budget is about is doing that again, is delivering that stronger economy, that stronger set of public finances, because whenever the next difficult thing comes along, I want to make sure whoever's sitting in this chair can do what I did over the last year, and that's the right thing for the country. It's the right thing for the British people to have that stronger economy to fall back on.
Well, let's keep talking about the spending, because there's quite a lot of it. You're announcing a skills package worth £3 billion. Now, a lot of this just replaces funds we would have got from the EU structural funds anyway. But where exactly is the new money in that £3 billion package?
So what you'll see all the details of this laid out this week. Now, we've talked a lot about building a high-wage economy. Now, the best way to do that is to give people opportunities to retrain, to upskill at any stage in their lives, and then get really well-paid jobs as a result of that. And we've got a suite of interventions to do that. The Prime Minister's Lifetime Skills Guarantee is one I could pick on as an example. We have around 10 million adults in this country who sadly don't have the equivalent of a level 3 qualification and an A-level equivalent qualification. Now, for the first time, the government will pay for those people to get that qualification. That's worth almost £3,000 a year in cost. But we know if we do that, those people are much more likely to get a job and earn more money. So that's one of the most important and powerful things we can do to help people earn more, create a better life for them and their families. That's why skills are important, and it's all part of building that stronger economy that I talked about, and that's what you'll see next week.
One of the biggest issues in building that stronger economy is productivity. Now, here's the problem. Pretty much every year we look at this. Whoever's Chancellor trumpets some huge sum for skills training to increase productivity. The IFS estimates that over the past 10 years, we spent £39.5 billion into adult training and skills. And here's what's happened as a result. I want to show you this, to the effect on productivity. I'm going to show you a graph which shows the increase in productivity over the last decade. The increase in productivity is as near zero as damn it. Until you've worked out why that money isn't making any difference, aren't we just throwing good money after bad?
No, there's lots of different things that go into increasing our productivity. Our plan for growth that we've set out involves investing in infrastructure, innovation and skills. I think of it like that. So infrastructure we've talked a little bit about actually earlier on in the programme. That's going to help drive up our productivity. Not to get technical about it, there's something called agglomeration economics, making sure that our cities can perform at their highest potential. So those investments will help us do that. We know that they will drive up. If you cluster all
the clever people and all the productive people in one place, you get more out of it.
No, it's not so much about the clever people. It's about for a given city, for it to maximise its potential, we need to make it easy for people to move around it. So that's what those investments will do, and we know that economically that will make a difference. So that's the infrastructure piece, for example. Skills we've just talked about, and giving people the tools they need to get better jobs, and we've got a range of things that we're doing there that we haven't done before, actually. The Prime Minister's Lifetime Skills Guarantee is new. Things like skills boot camps are new in this country, working with hundreds of employers to design 3 to 4 month courses with a job interview at the end, with proper employer engagement during the training. These are new interventions, and we think they're going to make a big difference. And then the last piece is innovation, is how do we build a high innovation economy that's going to be ready to embrace some of the technological change we're seeing. So there, it's investing in R&D, it's making sure our growing companies can get the capital they need, it's about making sure we attract talented people from abroad, it's about helping our companies grow. So our Help to Grow programme, again, we've never done something like this before. It's giving small and medium-sized companies mini MBAs, support with digital technology. I'm confident that all of those things are going to raise their productivity, and that chart that we saw will start to tick up.
But, Chancellor, isn't there a big elephant in the room here? I mean, you're saying all of this and you're offering the money and so on. Is one of the reasons that nothing changes is that in spite of all this money for training, the apprenticeship levy, huge, 2.7 billion, I think, 5,000 employers don't use it. 400 million worth of that levy expired, we understand, last year. And isn't the problem really the one that the Prime Minister and also your colleague, the Home Secretary, frequently talk about, which is that as long as employers can bring in cheap labour through immigration, they aren't going to invest in training and skills and raise productivity in the way that you want it to be raised?
Well, I wouldn't say that nothing has changed. And actually, I think some of the things that we've already put in place are starting to yield benefits.
Graph is still flat.
That graph is over the last 10 years. But let me just look at the time that I've had this job and what we're seeing now. What we're seeing is record numbers of job vacancies. We're seeing employers wanting to hire. We're seeing businesses' intentions to invest growing again, partly aided by measures that we've taken like the super deduction, which is a huge tax incentive for businesses to invest in increasing their productivity. And we're seeing people's wages rise. Real wages today are 3.5% higher than they were before the crisis. So actually, all the things that we put in place, the plan for jobs that I've been on this show talking about a lot over the last year and a half, that plan for jobs is working. People are seeing the benefits of it. And I'm confident that if we continue to deliver on investing in infrastructure, innovation, our skills, we will see our growth rise. And next week's budget will demonstrate that plan in action. We will build that stronger economy, we'll drive up our economic growth and productivity, and people are going to feel that in higher living standards and a better quality of life.
All right, let's talk about what some of your colleagues in the Conservative Party say, which is that you're not really a very Conservative Chancellor at all. You said the Prime Minister said in the party conference that you would be the first government in decades not to duck hard decisions. You'd be radical and optimistic. And let's see if that's actually true. For example, nobody wants to keep the system of business rates. You said in your 2019 manifesto that we will cut the burden of tax on business by reducing business rates, and you promised a fundamental review. 2 years now, are you going to be telling us on Wednesday that you're going to get rid of business rates?
Well, I will talk on Wednesday about the conclusion of that fundamental review, so it wouldn't be appropriate for me to do that.
Oh, it's actually concluded?
So, yes,
we will get an outcome from this review.
We will get an outcome from the review. We've said that we would conclude the review in the autumn, and you'll see that. I mean, but on business rates, it's important to remember this is a government that's put in place the small business rates reduction, which means a third of all properties don't pay any business rates at all anymore. And over the past year and a half, through coronavirus, we've delivered about £16 billion worth of tax cuts on business rates to help hospitality and retail businesses get through all of this. And in terms of the review and reform, I think you've got the Shadow Chancellor on later on in the show. I mean, there are people who say you should just abolish business rates, which I think is what the Labour Party position is.
Indeed,
business rates obviously, business rates obviously does raise £25 billion. I'm sure you'll be asking her, well, what is a system that would replace that? If you are going to just stand up and say you're going to abolish it.
That's OK, I'll do that interview. What about your
well, as I
plans?
said, we've delivered short-term relief during the last 18 months through coronavirus. That support extends through to next year. We'll be talking a little bit more about the future and some things that we can do in business rates next week in the budget. But that's all part of a budget that, as I said, it builds a stronger economy, and you will see us supporting business. And there are lots of different ways to support business. Business rates is one of them. Incentives to invest, like our super deduction, the biggest ever tax cut for businesses that this country's seen, and that's creating a strong climate for investment, and that's going to create jobs as well, helping small companies with mini MBAs, digital skills help to grow, I mentioned, helping them take on new staff, young people through the Kickstart scheme. Lots of different things we're doing to help business.
But you understand where I'm going here, because it's reported that this week the former Prime Minister David Cameron told Mr Johnson that at least in my day, we cut taxes. You are not doing that at all. You're presiding over the highest tax burden since the post-war period, and we can have another look at this. The IFS says that you've got a sustained level of public spending, 42% of GDP, and it's the highest since 1985. And actually, look at the graph since the post-war period, 1950. You're still pretty high, 35%. That's not the low-tax conservatism that the Prime Minister promised, and you yourself said you stand for.
Yes, and of course I do stand for that, and that's what I would want to deliver, and that's where my instincts are. But you also have to take a step back, Trevor, and think, well, what have I and the government had to grapple with over the past year and a half? We've had the biggest economic shock that we've experienced in 300 years. We've had the need, rightly, to come and support the country through that, which has obviously been enormously costly. It drove our borrowing up to levels we haven't seen since World War II, just on the other side of that chart. And we've got a strong ambition to invest in public services and drive up our growth by investing in infrastructure, innovation and skills, all the things that we've talked about earlier. So those are the things I'm grappling with. And I've got to take the world as it comes. I wish I hadn't had to deal with coronavirus and a once-in-300-year economic shock and all the damage that has done to our economy, and an NHS backlog that was stretching into the millions that we thought it was really important, rightly, to get some funding in to address. But those are the challenges that I'm grappling with, and I have to take those challenges and figure out, well, what's the right way to do that? And we've made some decisions, which I believe, although they are difficult, are the right decisions. They're the responsible decisions. And ultimately, we'll deliver on the things that people want to see us deliver on, and indeed build that strong economy for the future, which is going to drive growth and raise our living standards.
To sum up, what Johnsonism in economic terms right now looks like is tight fiscal control, squeeze on every department except maybe health, lots of universal credit, the £20 uplift, prospect of inflation at 4%, and by the way, less on public services when there's more demand, less in wage packets when prices are going up. Now, offer some of your colleagues at least some hope that that isn't the totality of Johnsonism and that there might be some tax cuts.
Well, what I tell you is this. Our focus over the last year and a half has been on delivering our plan for jobs. I'm pleased to say that plan has worked, with far fewer people unemployed than we feared, the economy recovering faster than people thought. So that's good news. That plan for jobs has worked. And looking forward, next week's budget is about the future. It's about building that stronger economy for our country. You've asked, what does that mean? Well, it means a few things. It actually means very strong continued investment in public services. It means driving our future economic growth by investing in infrastructure, innovation and skills, the things we've talked about. It means giving businesses confidence through all the things we're going to do to support them. And lastly, it means supporting working families, as we have done through the last year. There are lots of different ways to support working families, but those things combined are what deliver a stronger economy for the British people, and that's what next week's budget is going to do.
OK, give your colleagues some hope. Rule out tax rises before the next election.
Trevor, you're asking me to do my budget live on your show, which, although it would be great, well, because I'm going to do it in Parliament on Wednesday.
All right. One last question. We have COP26 next week. One of the things we know is no President Xi, no President Putin, no new restrictions on fossil fuels if the Australians and the Chinese, and to some extent the Saudis, though they're making a gesture, would have it. It's a bit of a shambles, isn't it?
No, I think that's not right at all. If you look at when we first took on the presidency of COP, I think about 30% of the global economy had climate targets in place. Thanks in part to the great work of the Prime Minister and the COP President, Alok Sharma. That number has now gone up to 80% because there's a team of people demonstrating UK leadership on the world stage to try and get more people to sign up to targets. So I think that's actually a great success story before we've even got to the summit in Glasgow. And, you know, what you're going to see, particularly on the bit that I'm responsible for example, the finance side of it, I'm hosting a full day on Wednesday. We're having great turnout from finance ministers and financial companies from around the world, committed to transforming our financial system to make it fit for the future, to help with the transition. And there's great news there. If you look at London just this week, the UK has been named best place in the world for green finance. We issued our second sovereign green bond, which now makes us the largest, the third largest issuer of sovereign green bonds anywhere in the world. And we've only been going a month. So, you know, actually, there's lots to celebrate. And actually, I think COP will be a big success.